Welcome! You're listening to Making Relationships Work. We're a company focused on women and their marriage. We lead and teach women just like you how to grow into and access, whenever you need to, your wise woman's self. The part of you who is deeply connected to your purpose, your innate wisdom, and your husband and family. We teach women in marriages how to rebuild trust and connection, to work through conflicts, no matter how deep, no matter how painful, and to lead your marriage to a place where the two of you experience marriage mastery. This podcast is about learning the systems and techniques that truly work to reconnect you back into your marriage so that you can experience the freedom that comes with a masterful marriage. Since this podcast is totally free, if you're getting tons of value and you want to support us and make sure that you get more of this good stuff, subscribe below and rate and review our podcast today. Now, on to the show. Hello, Women Making Marriages Work, and hello to Making Relationships Work, our YouTube channel and our podcast. Hello, it's lovely to be here. So I'm doing another reader question tonight, and it's a complex one. So I'm going to talk you through that in a minute. And I want to talk to you about how you can get your question answered. So if you're listening and you're not in our Women Making Marriages Work Facebook group, then do a search, find us and come on in, and you'll see a thread in there that you can pop your question on. So if you're watching us from YouTube, if you're watching us or listening to us from wherever you get your podcasts, then that's what you can do to get your question answered. So today's question is from Brooklyn, and she writes that she has had a lot of trauma from past relationships. This in turn has made it seem nearly impossible for her to open up and to let her husband love her. What is the best way to get over those traumas so that she can be open, more lovable, and a better mother? She has 3 girls that she wants to raise to be strong, independent young ladies that are confident and feel loved completely, but it's hard to do when she herself needs to heal so that she can break the cycle. So there's a couple of things. First of all, I can't determine what type of trauma you have had, which will depend. Well, it may change the nuance of what we talk about. And so what I'll do is I'll speak generally to people in general and their experiences, and that may or may not fit you, Brooklyn. So your job is to discern from what we're talking about and see, yeah, this bit fits. Does that make sense? Because when we're talking about trauma, we're really talking about 2 or 3 different definitions. The first definition is what constitutes trauma when you're looking at it through a diagnostic manual. So if you're a clinical psychologist doing a diagnostic or a formulation on a client, then there are really key levels that need to be met in order to define someone as having been through a trauma. Most people use trauma as a colloquial kind of description to discuss the impact of life events on a person's brain and their nervous system. And you can have all kinds of traumas from that perspective. So they're the first main two. And now I'm going to take this idea of a general use of the word trauma and talk about how it comes from big T or little t. So big T traumas are those things that bring real changes to your nervous system. They are where your body kind of gets the jolts or the jars or the thoughts that float in, the obtrusive thoughts. Perhaps there is night terrors and panic. Perhaps there is fear of being in open spaces or in public. There's all kinds of ways big T trauma manifests. And so big T traumas are usually witnessing something quite large, kind of like a car crash, or if you're in the military or a first responder, you would see quite regularly quite horrific experiences involving fellow humans and their children. And so those things are kind of understood by general public around that's a big T trauma. When we're talking about little t traumas, then those are also worth noting. So they may not be a one-off big event where you can say, I remember when X happened and it was kind of a big event. These ones are the gathering of experiences along the way. And so you could look at this through an attachment wound. So perhaps which also could be argued of being a big T trauma, but maybe we'll choose an easier hanging fruit. So a little T trauma might be an experience you had when you were in the playground at school and you were left out. And you were left out in a number of ways that over your life, you have these kind of small hurts and they accumulate. Or it could be that you weren't attended to well by your parents. And so it doesn't cross into neglect, but it wasn't well attuned. It wasn't well supported. You weren't understood or scaffolded in the way that you needed to be and you deserve to be. And there are lots of other definitions of little T traumas outside of those, but you can see that little T are small things that happened that had an impact and kind of still sit in there. And the big T had a big impact and still sit in there. And both do the same kind of thing. And over our lifetimes, we tend to accumulate small little T's, and most people have little T trauma in their body. And many of us have big T trauma in our body, mind as well. And so, Brooklyn, if we talk about you specifically, and when you describe it's difficult for you to open up and receive love, this is one of the, I would guess this is an indicator of an experience in your formative years, your family of origin, where the ability to trust that you could give and receive love when you needed it in a way that filled you up and was good for you didn't happen, or if it did happen, it happened inconsistently and wasn't dependable. And so that hypothesis, which obviously I haven't met you, so it could be incorrect, that hypothesis, though, would translate into relationships further down your life where you have been taught in your formative years how to be in a relationship. That was with your caregivers. And now you use that same model of the world with the relationships you have in your romantic life. And they usually mirror. So what happened in those formative years is usually mirrored in your later years. And so what I'm hearing is there's been past relationships where there's been little T or big T traumas happen that have eroded your sense of safety in the world and your level of openness and your ability to feel safe in giving and receiving love. And when that happens, then we start to build what we feel like are really appropriate safety boundaries. We kind of put up a barrier between ourselves and the people that we love. And we do that really to keep ourselves safe, don't we? But in doing that, we rob ourselves of the ability to receive love, and we rob ourselves of the ability to give love because we have the fortress around us. And so sometimes when everything aligns well, it feels safe enough to let down that fortress a bit, but it's inconsistent. And you will hear that word that I use, the inconsistency, and hear that it matches a probable formative experience in your life of inconsistency. And so if we take this hypothesis and we expand on it, then usually, actually let me restate it and then I'll add on to it. So if we experience in our family of origin an inconsistency in the way that we give and receive love, or how it is received when we do give it, and a feeling of emotional safety, we tend to replicate that in our adult relationships. And then we tend to replicate that with the way we raise our children. So what I can hear, Brooklyn, is you have a determination to want to be different, to want to be the change that you wish for your children, and that you're having trouble because you're not feeling healed. So you're not feeling kind of integrated, perhaps whole, perhaps on your own 2 feet, perhaps able to self-regulate, perhaps able to give and receive love consistently yourself. And so you're noticing that there is a flow-on effect to your girls, and your greatest hope is that they'll have a different experience to you. And you're worried that your pain, your experiences are going to cost you in terms of your relationship with your husband and your relationships with your 3 girls. And As we've talked this through, Brooklyn, and again, we haven't met, so this may not fit. But if this does fit, or if we could speak about it in general terms, then somebody who doesn't work with themselves to heal those things to heal those little t traumas, or to grow the new skill sets and build the safety around giving and receiving love, then what we do know is that will translate to your children having an experience with you as their parent that is going to result in them perhaps having a better experience than you did, but perhaps not having the full experience that they need to be healthy, stable, functioning adults and then parents themselves one day. That's not to say it's not possible. Of course it is. And there is no cause and effect around healing. So sometimes you can do nothing and your children will not pick up those things. And sometimes you can do everything and they will pick up those things. Yes. So there needs to be mentioned that there are variables. However, what we want to talk about is what you can do, because what you're noticing is you have 3 girls and you're worried that you're raising them in a way where you're going to transfer your pain to them. And that's called intergenerational trauma transfer. And you have these traumas from other people who have gifted them to you consciously or unconsciously. And now you would like to put them down to heal the wounds and to grow into somebody who can allow your 3 children to have a different experience of life. And so for that, I really congratulate you, because the work of the woman who does this is often unrecognized by others, and it is often invisible. And yet it's the most sacred work we can do. We're interrupting the transfer of intergenerational trauma. And who knows what that does in 1 or 2 or 3 generations in terms of how it heals the world and how it allows the world to bloom in a way it never has. So sincerely, well done. So in terms of what you can do, how do you get over those traumas? They're not things you get over. That's the thing. They're things that you work through. And so essentially what you're looking to do is to allow yourself to have the experience of a memory of that event, or an equivalent experience, and not have a body or a brain reaction to it in a way that takes you on a downward spiral. You're looking for neutrality, or perhaps even creation into something that serves you better. And so there are a couple of ways that you can do that. First is you can do that with a very good therapist, not a bad therapist. You need to find a very good therapist who specializes in trauma treatment. So there are 2 types of trauma treatment. One is called EMDR, and one is called cognitive processing therapy, CPT. If they're not doing those, and they're not doing those in really rigorous ways, then the treatment is unlikely to succeed. And unless you have somebody extremely competent, then the treatment is likely to not be delivered at the level it needs to be delivered in order to be successful. So that's the first thing, therapist. Second thing is, it's not just therapy that gets you through this. So therapy heals those pieces, but therapy is not very good at building a replacement identity for you to step into that was never built for you, in terms of feeling like that wise woman matriarch who can create and grow a life that is authentic and congruent with who she is and how she wants to express herself and leave her legacy. And so that part, therapists don't do. And they tend to just work on the bits that aren't working, and they give you alternative thinking kind of things, but they don't allow you to create an identity of somebody who has not just overcome trauma, but has built an internal operating model that allows her to grow and to thrive. And I feel like that's what you're asking for. So that's the work that we do here. We don't do the trauma work in here. We help you find someone to do that one-on-one. That's one-on-one work. We run a group program here. And I would encourage you to book a call with us if you haven't already. I'd encourage you to watch the masterclass if you haven't already. And I'd encourage you to really start to think about, who do you want to be? Who do you want to grow into? What do you want your nervous system to be like? What do you want your ability to give and receive love to look and feel like? What do you want your brain to think about? What do you want? Because in order to be able to create it, we have to know where you want to go. And if we don't know where you want to go, we can't build the bridge to get you from here to there. So that's my answer. Brooklyn, I have a real soft spot for women who are recovering from intergenerational trauma, who are leading change so that their children have a different experience of life. It's not the only type of client we look after, that's for sure, but it's certainly one that is very close to my heart. And so my hope is that this is really helpful for you and that it inspires you to continue on with the work that you're doing and to start to create and design and commit to a different way of living. So my love, if that means that I get to meet you and work with you, that would be wonderful. And if it doesn't, I wish you the very best of luck and in terms of building out a recovery plan so that you can give yourself and your children a different type of life, a different type of experience, so that you know what internal freedom looks and feels like, and safety in yourself, so that you can give and receive love, and that all of those things you give to your children because you get to have them. We know they learn by osmosis, but we also know they learn by you translating life to them. So all the very best of luck to you, my darling, and well done on being the person who wants to be the change, because you are a lighthouse. That turns you into a lighthouse, into a warrior, into somebody who is steady on their feet and living life in alignment with themselves. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Bye, darlings. Thank you for tuning into today's show. If you're feeling fired up and you're ready to grow and you want to know more about how to do that, here is what I want you to do now. I want you to watch my marriage masterclass. This masterclass will show you how my clients have turned their struggling marriages into thriving marriages, even without their husband's buy-in. How my clients have gone from cycles of poor communication, disconnect and loneliness to being teammates and soulmates with their husbands again, even after they've already tried everything. And the proven system my clients use to start transforming their marriages in minutes, not years, because life is too precious to waste one more minute in an unhappy and unfulfilling marriage. So if this is what you're looking for, I want you to click the link below and take a look at my masterclass.